from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. It's Mind the Gap, a practical web series for young and future music educators. Tonight on the program, Associate Professor of Trumpet at Arizona State University and Yamaha performing artist Joseph Burgstaller, artist, designer, choreographer, educator, adjudicator, and mentor Casey Perkins, Principal Horn for Black Pearl Chamber Orchestra and Yamaha performing artist Larry Williams, Director of Education and Artist Relations for Yamaha Corporation of America John Wittmann. Tonight's conversation moderated by Billy Rulapaugh and Susan Smith. Please welcome Billy Rulapaugh and Susan Smith.
Good evening, and welcome to the 11th episode of Mind the Gap, a webinar series focused on young and new teachers and those student teachers whose experience have been and continue to be interrupted by the pandemic. My name is Susan Smith, and I'm an educational consultant for Music for All and a lecturer in music education at Troy University in Troy, Alabama. I've taught at all levels and areas of music education, and I'm especially interested in supporting young teachers as my daughters are starting their second and fourth years as music educators. The first of our episodes I co-hosted with David Starnes, Directors of Orchestras at Kennesaw Mountain High School. But as we move forward, we'll be inviting guest moderators onto the show with David and I to give even more perspective and insight. Tonight I'm joined by Master Gunnery Sergeant Billy Rulapaugh, and he'll be the first to introduce himself, and the rest of the panelists will do the same. Billy?
Thank you so much, Susan. Hi, everyone. My name is Billy Rulapaugh, and as Susan said, I'm a Master Gunnery Sergeant in the Marine Corps. My primary job in the Corps is actually as a talent scout, so to speak. I am the musician placement director for the Commandant Zone, the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps in DC. And a secondary kind of piece to it is that I'm a certified health and wellness coach. And in doing that kind of work, I think that through my time in the Marine Corps plus my time as a wellness coach, there might be some things that might be helpful, for everyone to kind of gather some insight from. So I would also like to introduce Larry Williams. Larry.
Thanks, Billy. Thanks, Susan. And welcome, everybody. It's great to be here with you guys. My name is Larry Williams. I'm a Yamaha horn performing artist and clinician. I play principal horn in the Black Pearl Chamber Orchestra in Philadelphia, and I'm the artistic director and solo horn of American Studio Orchestra in Baltimore. I teach at the Washington Adventist University, and I used to be on the chamber music faculty at the Peabody Conservatory of Music. My connection with Music for All is that I serve as the horn clinician and adjudicator for the Music for All National Festival every year in Indianapolis, which is a fantastic experience for young people. I would highly suggest that you, if you're not involved with it, highly suggest that you encourage your students to give that a try. It's great to be here.
That's awesome, Larry. That sounds great. Thanks so much. How about you, Casey? Welcome to tonight.
Hi, everybody. I'm Casey Perkins, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I have been teaching marching band, drum corps, and winter guard for about 30 years. And before that, for about 14 years, I was a giddy fan and performer. And then about 25 years ago, I started doing some creative expression process, doing some practices that really deepened. It ended up deepening my teaching, deepening that and expanding my teaching ability. So now I do some drop-in judging, some consulting, and also teaching of expressive arts here in Nashville. And I bring that to my teaching of marching band and color guard as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Man, that's a long time, 30 years, Casey. Jeez. Wow. You don't look like it would be 30 years.
Okay, Billy.
Sorry. Okay. So, all right. Well, welcome, Casey. Thank you so much. All right, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Burgstaller. I'm the Associate Professor of Trumpet here at Arizona State University, of which I am actually alumnus. And it's my pleasure to be here today, especially talking to our music educators. I'm a proud product of the American music educating system. I'm also a Yamaha artist for many years. I've been playing the trumpet since I was 5. So I'm 49 now. I can't count that high because I am a trumpet player. I believe I was selected for a panelist position here because of my beauty. I also teach a class here at ASU. I've been teaching for 20 years now, called Change Your Mind, Change Your Playing. And I'm sure that a lot of what I teach and a lot of what I believe in has a lot of commonalities with my fellow panelists here. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome, Joe. Change your mind, change your playing. What a perfect phrase. That's awesome. Thanks for being with us tonight. And then, John, welcome to tonight, and please tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Billy. I am so thrilled to be here and honored. Thank you so much for asking me. My name is John Wittmann, and my formal title at my job is Senior Director of Artist Relations and Education for Yamaha. And in that job, I get an unbelievably wonderful opportunity to work with many wonderfully gifted people. I'm surrounded by talent every day. And well, I can't wait to be surrounded by talent again every day real soon. But I've been with Yamaha for about 24 years actually. And before that, I was a Yamaha performing artist. I'm a drummer by trade. And I was a band director for years in upstate New York. I'm an upstater, and taught and led two music programs in upstate New York, and that led to more performing and more writing, and then to actually to Yamaha, like I said, as an educator and an artist. I taught at Lawrence Central High School. I taught percussion there for a long time in the jazz ensemble, and then I've been now full-time with Yamaha, still played drums a lot, and love to lecture at high schools and colleges on goal setting, and another talk I give, which is called The 10 Things I Wish I Knew, just to try to help people not make all the mistakes I made while I was growing up. So it's great to be here, Billy. Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I am also a drummer as well. So
nice.
I definitely, yes. Thank you and welcome.
And we're as beautiful as Joe Burgstaller.
Trying to be.
I don't know. At least the brass players outnumber the percussionists on the piano for sure. But so I was so excited about this panel tonight because this is a little bit different than the way we've been doing it. We've in the past done just an agenda and asked everyone to kind of address that if they could. But tonight, I've been struck by each one of these panelists in different ways, in different sessions I've been to, or be that in social media, or ways that they have positively impacted those around them during the pandemic and before. That I ask each of you to just to talk to us a little bit for a few minutes on some things some insights you'd like to share with music educators on ways to self-protect or self-help or things like that you've seen that have elongated your careers and things you think that might help them. So Joe, we're going to start off, actually I said Joe, but Larry, you're going to kick us off tonight. Is that right?
I'm happy to. So my quality of life topic for young music educators and future music educators is going to be to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. But before I get into that, one of the silver linings of going through what we've been going through with the quarantining and the transitioning to virtual teaching and in my case, master classes and workshops has been, for me personally, that it's given me some time to reflect on how I got to where I'm at personally and musically and career-wise. And in doing so, I've come to some really interesting realizations. And it relates to emotional intelligence in that the four, well, let me just give you guys the four questions to ask yourself in terms of emotional intelligence. One, can you recognize and regulate your emotions and reactions in the workplace? Two, can you build trust and positive relationships with other people? Three, can you empathize with other people? And four, can you give and receive effective and constructive feedback? Those are four really, really great areas to focus in terms of your own personal growth. And so as I've been thinking about and talking about my personal journey over the last year in master classes and workshops, it's the relationships that I have had, even more than my focus on the development of my craft, that has had a big impact on my professional career. And what I would encourage young teachers to do, in addition to obviously constantly and forever focusing on the passion that you have for music, and the passion that you have for teaching music, and the understanding that we all have about the power that music has to transform lives and to impact lives, is when thinking about your own personal self, to really do some work on your personal growth, because it's your personal growth that you're bringing to your students all of the time. Beyond your stick technique, beyond your embouchure building, beyond your whatever it is that you're teaching, what your students are getting from you is you. You as a person, the energy that you bring, how you feel about yourself. And so focusing on your emotional intelligence, your balance, how you feel about yourself, how you deal with your emotions at work, and really, to me personally, most importantly, developing and building relationships with your colleagues, with your mentors, with your students, with the parents, with everyone that you deal with, is something that you should not take for granted, because it's the relationships that I looked back on that really actually impacted every decision that I made. It impacted what I prioritized and didn't prioritize. I can look back now because I'm old and I can see, wow, if I hadn't spoken to that person that day, it would not have led me to the next thing in my life. I started out as a trumpet player. I was a little bit better than Joe when yeah, it's okay. We talk about that. Just a little bit better. Actually, I was really quite horrible at the trumpet. But my best friend, who was better than me at the trumpet, volunteered to try the French horn. And because he volunteered to try the French horn, I volunteered to try the French horn. And it turned out French horn was really easy for me. Right? So, and on it goes, a series of events and people and relationships and choices and opportunities and failures. It just leads you throughout your whole life. But it's the relationships that you build with people that can have a huge and positive impact on your career and on your feeling of self-worth. And especially right now, with all of the stress that we're all under, with all the change going on, when you think about what would be best in terms of focusing your attention on things that are going to impact your students, you might forget about yourself. You might really start just thinking about building your skill set out or getting experience and things like that, and you should. But really, do me a favor. Look at yourself in the mirror. Get a good understanding of who you are right now, and then start reaching out to people, build those relationships, and invest in those relationships. You don't need to go through your whole career just focusing on yourself. It's what we do together that matters. That's what you're going to be doing as an educator anyway, right? So really just build those relationships. That's all I really want to talk about.
Fantastic. That's really awesome information, and I think we'll probably just go straight into the types of things that Casey talks about, because she's all about relationships and that positivity and finding that creativity. So Casey, what do you have to share with us tonight?
Okay, well, I start to think of myself as a teaching instrument. So how am I keeping this instrument in tune? My mind, my body, my energetic state, my clarity, my grounded learning. How am I keeping this instrument in tune? And that includes knowing myself, knowing my patterns, knowing my stuck points, if I'm shifting, if I'm changing, if I need further learning, if I'm creating community, like Larry was saying, with other educators or artists or therapists or mentors who encourage dialogue. Am I creating that? And when I'm tuning this instrument, I'm talking about my ability to respond as a teacher. So I'm calling that response ability, the ability to respond. How do I stay awake and aware and ready, open to shifting, open to quick ideas, open to improvising and collaborating and asking for help? I want to keep this instrument able to respond. I don't want the keys to gum up. How do I keep myself clear? And for me, I've done that by creating daily rituals of creative process. So for me, that having these creative explorations keeps that channel open. And it's a different channel than the knowing of teaching and that I've taken, through my education or through all that teaching. The creative channel does something to complement the education or the learning or the experiences that I've had. So I'm bringing those together, and that brings forward other voices in myself, other perspectives, other ways of accessing wisdom. And I'm bringing all that to a teaching platform, to collaborating with others. So some of those things for me have been meditation, sitting in nature, walking in nature, sitting on the balcony, sipping tea quietly for 5 minutes every day, writing. I'm writing morning pages. Maybe I'm just downloading in my notebook, and it doesn't have to look like poetry. It doesn't have to look like a story. I'm just downloading. And that, even just one page of that every day is opening space in my head. It's opening space for me to be able to respond as a teacher. Playing music, singing or sounding or toning, moving to music. And dancing, but also just following the impulses. How does my body want to move to music? Maybe I do that every morning. Drawing, cooking, sewing, painting, building, poetry, reading poetry, sculpting. I'm finding materials that delight me. And so maybe I'm putting together 2 or 3 of these things a day, meditation that goes into movement, that goes into writing. And that's a little 15-minute practice that I do every day. It's this little yummy fountain that is nourishing me and keeping me open. So this for me is about making space, about being curious, being kind to myself. And this is how I cultivate the gap, bringing back the gap into this, reminding the gap. It's the value of the pause. And this really helps with teaching. So I'm taking a pause before I'm responding. I'm knowing myself, and then I'm responding. I'm showing up for myself, not just for the job, but when I show up for myself, I can be of better service to others. But also creating pockets of space and time informs my teaching. I can make quicker decisions. I'm following impulses, especially during this pandemic. Oh, I have this idea, follow it, right? Maybe this doesn't look normal. I'm not normal teaching. It doesn't have to look like that because this is not a normal situation right now, right? So I'm bringing other tools. I can trust myself in the moment. I can trust myself to follow those impulses or to just wait. I don't have to know. I don't have to respond. So what I've been liking calling this during the pandemic is like Mary Poppins. She opens that big carpet bag, right? She opens it up. Here comes an umbrella. She needs an umbrella. Here comes the next thing she needs. So it's expanded. Doing creative practices, setting aside a daily ritual time has expanded my toolbox as a teacher. That's expanded my toolbox. And I can go into the next place with the carpet bag and the umbrella up and land and feel more confident, but also just feel just relaxed, released, and maybe I don't know something, but I'm okay that I don't know. And I'm aware of that. So that seems like the pandemic for me is pulling out these different things because the normal things don't work. And that's okay. And allowing myself to not be perfect with that. So working on process every day, just being in process, has really helped me stay in a flow. And so that's the value of creative practices. And it's, we bring our musicianship to that as well. And just being curious about what else is here that can nourish me and complement me and help me to be a better teacher, a better person, and just a better collaborator as well.
That's awesome. Thank you. Casey, when we come back to questions, one of the things I want you to talk to us about is how we do that without being self-critical. Because I think a lot of musicians and artists, we won't allow ourselves into different areas because we start and we think that's not very good. I can't do that. I'm not going to try to paint. I'm not going to try to do poetry because it's difficult. It's hard for us to even listen to music, right? Because the first thing we listen for are the mistakes, not necessarily the soothing nature of it. So maybe when we come back to questions, if you'd think on that, maybe ways to let ourselves kind of release into that. But thank you. Joe, tough act to follow there, I know, but I know you're up for it. So.
Boy, I'm so inspired listening to my colleagues already, and I knew I would be. Maybe I would take a bit of a different tangent to get to where I was going. It was so beautifully said. I'm going to say something maybe that's not so beautiful. COVID is a teacher so far, is it not? It's really reframed things or encouraged us to reframe who we are, as Larry said, and as Casey said, I'm going to paraphrase here, how we're taking care of ourselves, how we're approaching each day, and more. Those are clumsily said. But I wanted to start with a story, I guess. And the story comes from right around when I met John about 25 years ago. I was in school and I had a brass quintet here at Arizona State University. And we were competitive and we went all over the country in music competitions and eventually won the Yamaha International Brass Ensemble Competition, which launched my Yamaha artist status and my relationship with John. And right around that time, we were doing practice tours leading up to the competitions, and there was I believe it was at Purdue University, and we did a concert there at the intermission. Both the trombonist and I. Now I'll pause here, just saying that my style is to tell stories that may stick with you in an odd manner, so the lesson kind of resonates for a little longer than this session. But unpause. Intermission came and the trombonist and I had to avail ourselves of the restroom. I don't know why I keep including him in the story because he's not here. I could just make it all about me, but I'm not going to do that, trumpet playing aside. And we could, there was indeed a restroom backstage. It was a small one and it was occupied, and it was occupied by an elderly gentleman. And the reason we knew it was occupied by an elderly gentleman is because we heard him say quite loudly, "Corn? When did I eat corn?" I'll just let that sink in for a second. Grossness aside, there's a real life lesson there, is there not? It's whatever we put in comes out. Whatever we put in comes out. And I think that, as Larry said, and as Casey said, is if we're looking at the COVID mini era, if we're going to coin it, TM, COVID mini era, if you use that, you have to credit me. This is definitely a reframe of who we are, how we operate in the world, and what we're passing along to our students. And I think it's important just to acknowledge, and I think we would all agree, to all of you watching who are music educators now or have been or will be, you are the most important educator in that school. I mean, I respect all the other teachers in that school, but there's no one who's going to touch lives and change lives like you are. And it sounds like a cliche, but it's just the truth. And I just wanted to provide you with a short framework of why I believe that music as a profession, as a performance profession, and this is going to sound really interesting coming from someone like myself who spent years in Canadian brass as a soloist traveling internationally. It's really interesting that you can do that on a professional level, but that's not what music is about. Music is about community. If you're familiar with the El Sistema system, coming out of Venezuela at all. The premise there, and I agree 100% with this premise, is that the ensemble is the ideal model for society. No matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter what language you speak, we all work in harmony towards a common goal. We have leadership, we have teamwork, and most importantly, perhaps, dissonance is a part of harmony and it's accepted. And so the way an ensemble works, and this takes training, and this is what you're doing in the schools, is you are training young people to be ideal role models in a society that really needs that. And so early in my career, I was a soloist, and I did something I called the Rafa Mendez project. Mendez was an early adopter of what we would say the clinician kind of aspect, where he went out into all the schools. And so I did the same thing, and I masterclassed at 60 high schools a year for many years. And what I saw was incontrovertible proof that music directors, you are touching, by my math, about 10,000 lives. You're changing 10,000 lives through the course of your career. And if you imagine just 1% of those people become music educators, just like you became a music educator because of the people who influenced you, think about how many lives and how much goodness and how much truth and how much positivity you're putting out into the world. And in order to do so, of course, we have to work on ourselves. And this is what we've been talking about today. But we have to take the enormity, the challenge of what our role is in society as a music director very seriously, and know that you change lives like mine. My first band director, Mike Teolis, I'm still friends with him, and he's an amazing musician, but more importantly, amazing person. And we're all working to be more amazing, let's say, every day. But just know how important you are to me, to our panelists, to everyone watching, but especially those kids in your band and orchestra and choir rooms, because they may not know it. But the one thing, and I'll end here, the one thing I did see at all these high schools that I went to is time and time again, all these students, these alumni of those schools would come back, and I would hear these conversations, and it still makes me tear up every time. I would hear them say, I didn't know it when I was in school, but this is the most important class I've ever been in. I didn't happen to go on to be a musician, but it changed my life in ways I had no idea what was going on. And that's why I honor you as you're enduring through this situation where I know that it's weird to teach music online. We're all doing our best, but boy, you are in the trenches in secondary schools there, and we appreciate you so much, and we're here for you, and I'm going to stop here.
Well, Joe, as I was sharing with the other panelists, that's one of the things I've so appreciated watching you. Your students aren't afraid to be good musicians. They're not afraid to make mistakes because you create an atmosphere of that positivity, and so you're one that's sharing that light as well. We're going to go on to Billy Rulapaugh, who not only, as he said, in the Marine Corps, has the opportunity to guide students to be a part of performing ensembles, but he's also a life coach. And he even survived being in my first high school band that I was a high school band director of, and has lived to tell about it. If I could change anything, I would probably change some of the things in those 2 years, because I don't think I was a very good music teacher. But
Oh, I don't agree at all. Well, thanks, Susan. And it's funny because after I've been listening to the other panelists, and I was like, okay, we didn't talk about any of this stuff before we started this, but it's the perfect way for me to actually say this about you publicly. And I'm not saying this, to sound embarrassing, but I agree with Joe's statement, and you are living proof of that, Susan. And the thing is that I was a junior in high school when she came as our band director, and she was right out of James Madison University at that point, which at that point in my life I worshipped, because that drum line was gigantic and I wanted desperately to be in it. But when she came, the whole world and my whole life changed. Like, no kidding. Do I even have it over here? No, it's over on the floor. But the picture of our high school marching band is over here. Now, all this other stuff that's behind me, and this, and this is in my basement here, I would not have gone down this path without her. I know I wouldn't have. She inspired. I remember asking her, do you know what drum corps is? Because I had just listened, not viewed, but listened to like 1989 Cadets on a cassette tape. And I was amazed. And I hadn't even seen it yet. And then when I met her 2 weeks later, literally 2 weeks later, I was like, do you know what this is? And how do you do this? And she was like, well, of course I know what this is. And suddenly my whole world changed. And then I made a profession of being in a drum and bugle corps for my whole time, for 19 years of being in the Marines. And the last 7 have just been trying to find other people to come and enjoy at least what I thought was really a fantastic job, number one, but also, again, going back to what's been said before, the community of people. It's so important. And obviously I'm still connected to my band director here. It's been incredible, and it doesn't go away. And I think that it's been part of my sanity to stay connected with people through all of this pandemic. So I think that we should try not to shortchange what our relationships in the past have meant as we're fostering new ones in the future, but also to stay connected as much as we can, so that we can kind of share the burden. Like, I think that's a key piece, kind of going into the health coaching stuff. Support is something that we all need, and we don't always know when we need it. But when you have a close group of people in your circle, in your tribe, so to speak, they can see that you may need support. And we have a few people in our lives that are like that. And I'll tell you that Susan asks me every single time we get on the phone, she's like, how are you doing? That's the very first question. And that, I know that's not just a salutation. I know it's like, I'm asking for real, Billy, how are you doing? And that makes a lot of stress go away almost immediately. So that's one of the things I would challenge any of us to do, is reach out to people that maybe you haven't reached out to in a little while, and genuinely ask how they are. Because I think deep down inside, all of us want someone to ask that of us. And then really to kind of talk about self-care a little bit. Like, this is just a key phrase, and it sounds witty and quippy, but self-care is not selfish. And to everyone's point before this, it is, if you can't put forth the best you unless you are working on making you the best version of you. And that begins with all the other aspects, and not just your craft, like Larry said, and not just the way we focus on these particular aspects of our life, but just us being us. Because I can tell you that through what Susan claims to be like maybe not her best years of teaching, the inspiration behind what she was driving in her vision was very apparent. And I followed it. I wanted to go to that place. So don't forget how much you being you makes a big difference to people. And that's really all I think I could add.
Awesome. Thanks, Billy. Well, and we'll come back around a little bit more about, how specifically to make those connections with people and how to make a jump, because I think that that's part of the problem with people. Sometimes they're afraid of something new and how to get into things and how to not look silly. We all see those memes or people saying, don't make fun of the people that are starting out at the gym for the first time, because that's what we all want. We want the gyms to be full and busy right now. We want everybody taking care of themselves or getting what they need. So that'll be some things that we we come back to. I had the opportunity to hear John Wittmann do a keynote at Summer Symposium some years ago, and it has stuck with me since then. Just like Casey Perkins, every time I edit a drill or something, I hear her say in my head, just put something else right there. This needs something else right there from one critique tape. It's amazing how people stick with you. But John, that keynote affected all of us that were there. So we appreciate you sharing some things with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Susan. And Larry and Casey and Joe and Billy, thank you so much. I've learned from you. I've taken notes, and I'm blessed to be here. I really thought a lot about, what it could be that I would share. And I went around and around and around, and I brought it down to one thing that I hope will be helpful to teachers and to anyone who's listening, pardon me, and that is, I highly encourage you to make some margin. And margin is space. This isn't a very deep topic, but I'm going to get really specific. Without space, I believe we suffer in our performance or in our conversations or how we communicate with people, what we give. I'm going to give you some examples of how I've learned to make margin. And I'll start out with the first one, which is making space, making margin in the morning. And in the morning, there is time before I delve into any task that I have quiet. And this is I call it my get a clue time. This is my coffee. This is my looking, reading, good things in. This is when I claim my agenda. This is when I decide how I will run this day. I know two things. No one will benefit if I don't decide how good I can be for other people in the morning. And that's a conscious decision. I really suck at falling into the day and then just kind of swimming my way through and trying to be okay. I'm horrible at that. So I found that in the morning, if I look at my schedule, now I don't write down tasks and I don't start doing emails or anything like that. It's important for me to look at everything that I have to do during the day, and I envision the meeting, say, or I look down at the meetings I have to do or the people I have to talk with, and I look and I envision that time and I say, what man must I be? Who's got to walk in the room? Now I'm in artist relations. It sounds really, or it can to some people sound really glamorous. It's really not. It's very, very challenging. It's wonderful, but it's also very, very challenging. But the point is that I look down the schedule and I'll say, oh, okay, I have to meet with Jim and Bill and Susan. Okay, well, they're a little sideways with me about this one. Could be a challenging moment. Oh, I have to be a peacemaker. I have to be a great solution finder. I have to have my big boy pants on. I might take a little heat, and I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to prepare myself to just try to be the best man I can be, So, but if my point is in the morning, if I don't kind of get into that role and think about the best man that I can be in those different situations, I don't think I'd be very good at it. So margin in the morning is me taking time, making time to think how I can be best for other people. Another thing about the morning margin, I love this phrase. Your demons hate fresh air. I love that. I've always held on to that, man. Get outside. I know it sounds like a broken record. Get outside, move. It's look, I'm 61, and yes, I run and I walk and, I just try and I hike and my wife and I try to just get out. I don't know what it is about it, but when I get outside, I come in and I just feel a little bit more equipped. So your demons hate fresh air. So smash the demons by getting outside and moving your body. Let's talk about the second time that you can make margin, I believe. Pardon me. And that is in a conversation. This is one thing that people in America are really crappy at. People from Asia and China and my Japanese colleagues and people I find from countries in the East are so much better than that. And that's this. When I'm talking to people in the United States, we go back and forth and we don't think a lot. What are we missing? Margin. What's in that margin? Thought. Space. Make margin in conversations. Make margins with your students. Don't hit that tape that you always hit. When you have said something 100,000 times, maybe think about it just a little bit. Enter the mind of the student or the group that you're with. Take a minute. That margin in a conversation has given me more success than anything in terms of negotiation. I've never taken a business course in my life. I've always, my degrees are in music. But my ability to stop, process, listen, and then speak sparingly, it's good stuff. And I know people who are really, really good at it. So number 2 was in a conversation, give yourself margin. Number 3 is before and after a meeting or a lesson. Look, I'm as guilty as you are. You come out of a meeting or a class or something like that, and it's, it's like there's a cell phone, you check it immediately. Well, what happens if you are in that frame on your cell phone before and then right after? You disconnect for your ability to either prepare or to process what happened in the meeting or the lesson, right? So remove yourself from people around, get alone, think about the door you're entering, think about how you want to enter the door, think about how you want to enter the room, think about who you want to be. Then enter the room, kick it. And then when you leave the room, give yourself a little space and ask yourself, what have I learned? Just a little bit margin before and after, I think is good stuff. Pardon me. And then I guess this is number 4, and then I'll close out, is it's really, really, really crucial that you take time for self-reflection, some margin in your day, your week, whatever, that you really stop and look at the person in the mirror. And you have to start thinking more about designing your perfect day. Because if you don't design your perfect day, someone else will design it for you. You really, really should take time to think about, what do I have to change? What do I have to remove in my life that's a distraction? Casey, you're just nailing it, so much on how you process things and how you take time. It was awesome to hear that. But take time for self-reflection and write about it, think about it, get good counsel, just roll it over in your mind. But if you don't take time and make margin for self-reflection, they say that nature abhors a vacuum, right? If there is a vacuum, it will just get filled up with stuff, so don't let stuff take up time for you to think about what must happen to you inside you so you can be better for other people. Okay, I guess I'll leave it there, Susan. I don't know if I went over.
Oh no, that's fantastic. Yeah, a great way to kind of bring that all back together. Some of the things that I think I'd like to talk about as we're moving forward is that all the things we're talking about are positive and things we want to be doing. But as sometimes as servant leaders in the music teaching area, is we feel guilt for that. For myself, as I got busier and my children got older, I was middle school, high school band director and a mom of 2, and I felt guilty if I took time for myself. I should have been, I should be doing something for someone else. And, part of that is the swagness in me, from Music for All, having learned over many years about giving back to other people. But an analogy my husband always makes is there's a reason that you put the oxygen on yourself first before your child, is that you have to be able to not be incapacitated to be able to lead other people. And I think that's something that maybe we can kind of chew on just for a little bit on how we overcome that. And I think some of it also in terms of getting into the health area is just how we get started. I know for myself, one of the reasons why I wanted this to be a topic is I kind of went through a transformation over the last 2 years. And, all of a sudden I realized, I'm 50 years old and my opinion counts. It matters. And that plus having a daughter who was willing to go with me to go work out, it changed my life. And in just having one person to support you so that you didn't feel like you were by yourself or making a fool of yourself, it changed everything for me. And that now is something that, and I think many of you probably feel this already, you want to share with other people. You know, it's not like you want to force it down somebody's throat, but you want them to kind of have that experience and happiness and positivity that you do. So we'll just kind of open up the floor, and as we go around, maybe if anyone has anything to offer on that. Casey, maybe we'll start with you on the creativity thing, and how do you do it and allow yourself and not feel bad or not think that it has to be perfect all the time.
Yeah, I think one thing I think about is it's reps. So even if I take 2 minutes of margin, 2 minutes of space, 2 minutes of gap, that's it. Just 2 minutes. And that can look like I'm just sipping my tea without looking at my phone. That's all. That's enough for that day. Then you go to the next day. You do your 2 minutes again. If it's too much to do 2 minutes, just 1 minute. You just do 1 minute. So it's reps. You know, this is building a muscle, just like going to the gym. We're building a muscle of space, you know? So there's a doing going on, but there's a doing that leads to being. So I think that, you know, 1 minute, 1 minute. So don't pick the hardest thing first. Don't pick the hardest thing. This is not about beating ourselves into relaxation, you know? This is, you know, pick just something that you can actually do. So that's how I would start that. And also I think of it as play. So pick something that's attractive and fun, and it could be cooking. I'm just going to cook something today. Or, you know, it's play. You know, I sat on the living room floor as a 4-year-old. I could sit there for hours, and there's not judgment. There's just play. There's, you know, there's just, this is just fun. This is just play, and it's easy. And oh, but I'm noticing now as a 51-year-old, there's a lot of criticism here. So that's food. And that's also noticing. And, you know, I would have, when I first started doing, I had a little journal where I wrote down my criticisms, just like, oh, I'm really critical. I'm noticing that without judgment. I'm noticing I'm critical. I'm noticing I'm really hard on myself. Then, you know, I did some therapy to get, oh, where's that coming from? Where's it? All of that, blah, blah, blah. But if this the simplest thing that I'm really critical, I wonder how I'm taking that into my teaching. Get real honest, you know? So I think for me, there's a sense of play and ease. If it doesn't have ease, I'm not starting there. You know, that's just me. I'm at that point. Ease, play, and something that's achievable, but also something you all said before was this accountability. I have somebody I check in with every week during the pandemic. I have somebody I check in with every month. I have a team of people who are there for me, who are listening. And sometimes they just listen, and then I hang up the phone, you know? So think about your accountability people and build that team, because community is an opportunity right now. The opportunity of community is here. And we're all in the soup together. This is once when we're all in the soup together. So this is an opportunity.
Obviously, a plus of the pandemic is we've all had to slow down, and we see people breaking bread, and we're not used to, you know, not pushing to get to MPA or festival and things, and having to focus on what we're teaching and how we're teaching. So those are some of the good ways and maybe those are some of the lessons we need to take from this experience, is that time that we've allowed ourselves, that maybe we need to keep hold of that and keep that margin, like John was talking about. Billy, how do you get people to kind of jump into that deep end and or believe in themselves? I mean, Larry and Joe have to do that all the time on their brass instruments and getting people to not be intimidated by them. But how do you get that in terms of health as well?
It begins with their personal choice. You know, I think that can't be disregarded. You know, the old adage, you can, you know, lead a horse to water, you can salt the oats, but you can't force them to drink. And nor would I ever want anyone to do that. It really does have to begin with a place, you know, where they want to create something that either is different or to make it better. And then all I try to do when I'm working with people like that is to bring that out to the forefront and remind them of the the power of their deepest why. What is really the reason, the driving force behind transforming something in your health, and being attentive to it. So it starts with that. And that doesn't seem like that might seem a little too big, but it really is a small thing, because I think deep down inside, all of us, when we admit to ourselves, what we really want, then we can set a course for action to go get it. And you definitely, you were speaking about, the last couple of years, the course was set in your mind and you did it, and I think that for any of us that are trying to do something, that's super important. And then the next step, the two things I've learned is that willpower and discipline are exhaustible resources. They don't last. They exist to get us kind of bridging the gap, not to use the play on words here, while we create habits that are sustainable. And just like Casey said, you have to start with little things and attainable things. Like, if you're someone that is really, and I'm not just trying to use food or beverage or whatever, but if there's something you gravitate towards that deep down inside you probably shouldn't gravitate towards, try to substitute things that might be better than that. And just little things like, okay, I won't have this many cups of coffee today. Okay, I won't have this many whatever today, and bracket back using that, but also research a little bit too. If there's things in your health that you want to change, then go and look for articles of people that have changed. And on top of that, model, like, you got to find a model to kind of like put yourself in that mindset. That's what I would like to look like, or that's what I would like to be like. So that's the best way I could probably say it. Hopefully that was what you were looking for.
Oh, absolutely. I think many of these things come down to consistency and being tenacious and not giving up. And I think that's what we find in our teaching as well. Small steps. And Larry, Joe, as you're setting goals for people, I assume that's some of the things that you deal with all of the time with students to get to those particular levels that you're trying to.
Absolutely. And I would add to that there's a patience needed for transformation. Is there not? Nothing happens overnight, and attainable goals are really important. And then also an awareness of the timeline it takes for personal transformation or a classroom transformation, all the while realizing and honoring that we are modeling for our students, right? So if we're pulling in different aspects of what we've been talking about, I love the idea of those margins, creating space in the relationship between teacher and student, or teacher and students. Music is also a relationship. Music is a we, not a me. And there is no relationship that ever is healthy or survives in a healthy manner when it's just about one party in the relationship, right? And to spoke backwards to what I was trying to say, maybe not so eloquently before, is that you, the music director out there, are so essential to us all as the facilitator for these relationships and the facilitator for this transformation, that I feel like you need to really hear that you're important. And the self-care and this notion of getting better yourself, and especially taking care of yourself in a stressful time like this, but even going forward, maybe that's the gift of COVID. And so that transformation, just know if you've probably been through transformations, perhaps mindfully in your lives, and all I can do is tell you what's worked for me. Maybe you would know better for you, but that it's a combination for me between, science and experience. And science will tell you, in the brain, a habit doesn't start forming until about 21 days in. That's when the brain goes, "Tacha, you're doing this mindfully, purposely over and over again. I'm going to start laying down a neural path and putting the myelin around it." But on average, it's around 66 days, sometimes as far as 90. So if you really want to go after something, it's perseverance, isn't it? I guess the cliche is the New Year's resolution that lasts a week, right? But you need 3 months. And so whether you're learning a stress management skill, or you're dieting, or you're changing some aspect of yourself and improving that, that perseverance, that follow through is another thing we're teaching in music that is sorely needed in modern day society, is the concept of follow through. We're not training professional musicians. We are changing the world through the way we function. And so if you can do that yourself, and I'm not perfect at it, so I'm not going to pretend I am, but just going after it, aspiring towards it, the motivation you can show, the perseverance, that's all inspiration to our students. And that makes it real for them. And then that makes them their own teacher, which is really our thing. The last thing I wanted to say, Susan, as you were talking about how the teaching has transformed, and maybe feeling guilty about not putting all your life into the middle school students, and it's really important to make that room, isn't there? My mom taught me that early on in my teaching. I'm a relative neophyte teaching. I'm 15 years in, so I'm not, but I remember getting exhausted in the first couple years, and I called my mom. She says, "Well, you can't. You're not doing a good job, because they can't feed off your energy. You have to teach them to feed themselves, right?" And so if that's that kind of been the overarching principle of my teaching, and then my teaching myself, is like, yeah, I could do it for them. They're not going to learn anything, but they're going to have to learn by watching me, and I need to teach them to feed themselves.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was a great way to kind of round things up. Well, I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. I think that I'm ready to go meditate a little bit. I'm already feeling better, a little calmer, a little happier place. And I appreciate you spending some time with us, all of you. I think that perhaps our participants and those who will see this on YouTube later on even can see why it was so important to get this group of people together. Music for All's mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through Music for All. Our vision is to be a catalyst to ensure that every child across America has access and opportunity to participate in active live-making music in his or her scholastic environment. I want to thank Joe Burgstaller, Casey Perkins, Larry Williams, John Wittmann, and my friend Billy Rulapaugh for being with us. And I'd like to thank our national presenting sponsor, the Yamaha Corporation of America. Be sure to check out Yamaha Educator Suite at yamahaeducatorsuite.com. Before we say goodnight, it's important that you understand that now more than ever, these uncertain times continue to impact Music for All, and we're extremely grateful for any donations gifted to our nonprofit organization. If you've enjoyed tonight's program, and in order, oh Lord, I lost my place, and in order for us to continue to provide our free educational resources and advocacy materials, please consider giving to Music for All in any amount. Your gift allows us to serve our mission with future music educational programming such as this webinar. Please visit musicforall.org/give. And finally, join us in our next episode, which will be an unusual and exciting time of Mind the Gap on Tuesday, January 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a special episode combined with a presentation of part of NAMM's Believe in Music Week. We're very excited about that. And in this episode, it's all about the composition, H history, and theory chat. Creating ensembles in a virtual environment will include Julie Giroux, Jeff Grogan, and myself, and David Starnes as the moderators. So for Music for All, this is Billy Rulapaugh. Say hey, Billy. And I'm Susan Smith. Thanks, everybody. Good night.